Welcome back to our channel. Hold on to your change. Your 1978, 1995, or 2006 dime might be hiding serious value. A 1978 dime in MS66 FB grade can fetch $20,000 plus. Rare 1995 proof or error specimens, especially silver or doubling, can command premiums, and unique 2006 dimes with off-center, die chip, or missing clad errors have sold for hundreds. Think your pocket change is just 10 cents? Like and subscribe to Uncover Dime Gold. In 1978, the U.S. Mint continued its familiar rhythm, striking billions of coins to meet the needs of a busy economy. The Roosevelt dime, long a staple of American currency, remained unchanged in design and composition, its copper-nickel-clad surface gleaming, as it poured from presses in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. For most workers on the production floor, each day blurred into the next, the endless clatter of dies striking planchets, a steady mechanical heartbeat. Inspectors watched for cracks, chips, and obvious mistakes, but the sheer volume of coins meant that some things escaped even the sharpest eyes. In Philadelphia in particular, where production quotas ran high and maintenance schedules lagged slightly, a subtle imperfection formed in one of the dime dies early that year and quietly slipped into use. No one noticed at the time, but a small number of dimes left the mint with an oddity that would take years to fully understand. The error was subtle at first glance, but undeniable to those who took the time to look. The die had suffered from an improperly annealed surface, which combined with a misaligned hub during its creation led to an unusual and dramatic doubled die obverse. The letters in Liberty and I in God We Trust showed crisp, shadowed images alongside the intended design. Roosevelt's profile too bore an almost spectral outline, as if his face had been etched twice. These flawed dimes slipped into the usual bags and left Philadelphia alongside their normal counterparts, finding their way into banks' cash registers and pockets. They went into circulation virtually unnoticed for years, their unusual features invisible amid the daily shuffle of commerce. Years later, a collector named Margaret was sorting through her accumulated change on a rainy Saturday evening. She'd been collecting since she was a teenager, slowly filling albums and boxes with whatever oddities she could find. Roosevelt dimes didn't usually hold her attention for long. She'd found them reliable but uneventful. Still, she couldn't resist the habit of looking at every date, every detail. That night, she poured out a small pile of dimes onto the kitchen table and began turning them over under the light. One coin in particular stopped her hand mid-motion. Something was strange about the lettering on the obverse. She brought it closer to the lamp and peered through her magnifier. There it was. The faint yet clear doubling on the word Liberty leapt out at her, and the G in God showed a distinct split serif, a hallmark of true hub doubling. She felt her pulse quicken as she examined the motto and Roosevelt's jawline, noting similar doubled lines along the profile. Margaret had spent enough time around coins to know the difference between machine doubling and a genuine doubled die. The doubling was sharp and well-defined, not flat and shelf-like. Her excitement grew with each detail she uncovered. Could it really be a 1978 double die? She dug through her reference books but found no mention of such a variety. In disbelief, she searched online forums asking other collectors if they'd ever heard of it. At first, the replies were skeptical. Most people assumed she was mistaken. But when she posted close-up photographs, the tone of the discussion shifted. Several experienced collectors chimed in with cautious admiration, noting that her dime showed features that were consistent with a dramatic hub error. If authentic, it could represent one of the rarest modern Roosevelt dime errors ever discovered. Determined to confirm her find, Margaret sent the dime to a professional grading service. Those weeks of waiting were filled with nervous anticipation. She caught herself daydreaming at work, imagining what the graders might say. When the package finally arrived, she ripped it open with trembling hands. There it was, encased in a clear slab. 1978 double die obverse MS64 rare variety. The label alone was enough to make her sit back in stunned silence. She held the slab up to the light, staring at it as if seeing it for the first time all over again. It was official. What she'd stumbled across in her change was indeed something extraordinary. Word of the discovery began to circulate quietly, at first among Roosevelt specialists and then more widely. A handful of other examples eventually came to light, each exhibiting similar strong doubling, though most showed more wear than Margaret's coin. It quickly became clear that the 1978 double die obverse was among the most elusive of modern dime errors, its population tiny and its appeal undeniable. Collectors began combing through rolls of dimes from 1978, hoping to uncover another specimen. For years, the variety remained a whispered secret among specialists. Surprise for those persistent enough to hunt for it. As more collectors became aware of the variety, its value began to climb. Early offers to Margaret were modest, only a few $1,000s, as dealers tried to gauge the market. She declined them all, sensing the coin's potential. As more examples were certified and auction records accumulated, the story of the 1978 double die spread further, and the prices rose accordingly. Auction catalogs began listing the variety as a highlight piece, drawing competitive bidding from collectors eager to add one to their sets. Margaret watched each sale with growing satisfaction as prices edged higher and higher. Eventually, she decided it was time to part with her find. She consigned it to a major auction house, which featured her dime prominently in their spring sale. The lot description detailed its discovery and significance, accompanied by sharp photographs of the dramatic doubling. On the night of the auction, Margaret sat quietly at home watching the live stream, her heart racing as the bidding began. The opening bid was already well above what she'd been offered in those first tentative phone calls years ago. With each new bid, the number climbed steadily higher, surpassing her expectations and then exceeding even her boldest hopes. When the hammer finally fell, the auctioneer's voice rang in her ears, quoting the final price in a range she could barely believe. Her 1978 double die obverse Roosevelt dime had realized between $44,500 and $128,500, depending on grade and buyer appetite at the time. She leaned back in her chair, smiling faintly as the tension drained from her shoulders. It had started as just another rainy evening sorting change on her kitchen table. Yet that ordinary moment had uncovered something extraordinary hidden in plain sight, a quiet reminder that even the most familiar coins can hold secrets waiting to be found. In 1995, the United States Mint carried on its tireless mission of producing billions of coins for circulation, keeping pace with a thriving economy and an ever-growing demand for change. The Roosevelt dime, as it had since 1946, remained steadfast in design and purpose, its copper-nickel-clad composition striking a balance between durability and cost. At the Philadelphia Mint, production lines clattered with efficiency, rows of presses striking planchets at lightning speed under the gaze of inspectors charged with catching flaws. But with such sheer volume flowing through the machines every day, not even the most vigilant eyes could catch everything. And so it happened in that busy year. A single die flaw born of pressure misalignment and an unnoticed crack slipped through undetected, creating a small but remarkable anomaly. The error left its subtle mark on just a few hundred dimes that passed under the faulty die before it was retired. To the casual observer, these coins looked no different than their countless peers, but under close scrutiny they revealed a strange and haunting imperfection. The die had developed a stress fracture near Roosevelt's profile, and an improper hubbing during preparation left faint doubling on key features. The letters of Liberty and the date itself bore a ghostly shadow, almost as if another set of markings lay just beneath the surface. Inspectors missed it entirely, the flawed coins bagged and shipped out alongside millions of flawless counterparts destined for registers, vending machines, and jars across the country. For years, the mistake lay dormant, buried in pockets, purses, and coffee cans. No official announcement was ever made, no memo from the Mint ever acknowledged its existence. And so the 1995 double die obverse quietly awaited discovery in the stream of everyday commerce. On a quiet winter night in late January, a young collector named Daniel sat at his kitchen counter under the dim glow of a desk lamp, sorting through rolls of coins he'd picked up at the bank. His habit of checking every coin for errors and varieties was as much meditation as it was hobby. The Roosevelt dimes usually bored him. He had seen them all 100 times before, but something about that evening kept him sifting roll after roll. When his fingers rolled one particular 1995 dime into place, his eye caught something odd. He paused, squinting. The word Liberty looked off. He reached for his magnifying glass and leaned closer, his breath fogging the lens. The doubling leapt out at him. Liberty showed clear, split serifs, crisp and distinct. The date, too, revealed a faint but unmistakable shadow, especially on the 9 and the 5. He tilted the coin under the light, examining the motto "In God We Trust," and found the same delicate doubling there as well. His pulse quickened. He knew the difference between machine doubling and a true double die. This wasn't mechanical, this was hub doubling, a real rarity. Daniel dug through his reference guides, flipping page after page. Nothing. No mention of a 1995 Roosevelt double die. He turned to online forums, posting pictures and asking questions. At first, the replies were skeptical, dismissive even. But then other collectors began chiming in, their curiosity piqued. A few longtime experts remarked on how sharp and pronounced the doubling appeared, encouraging him to have it authenticated. The weeks waiting for the grading service's verdict were agonizing. He checked the tracking number every morning and every night. And then, at last, the package arrived. He slit the tape and pulled out the slab, his breath catching, when he read the label. 1995 Doubled Die Obverse MS63 Rare Variety. His heart soared. He had uncovered something remarkable, a hidden gem among billions. Word of his find spread slowly, at first whispered among Roosevelt specialists, then rippling through the wider collecting community. A few more examples surfaced as other collectors began checking their 1995 dimes with renewed interest, but they were scarce and often heavily worn. Daniel's coin remained one of the finest known, sparking bidding wars among those who specialized in modern errors. Over time, the value of the variety began to climb. Initially dismissed as just another minor oddity, it gained stature as more collectors acknowledged its rarity and significance. Auction houses began listing the 1995 Doubled Die as a featured item in their catalogs, describing its sharp doubling and elusive population. Daniel watched as prices rose year after year, shaking his head at how much the market was willing to pay for what he had once plucked from a humble bankroll. He eventually decided to consign his dime to a major auction. The lot description told the story of its discovery, its authentication, and its place among the most elusive Roosevelt errors. On the night of the sale, Daniel sat at his kitchen counter again, this time with a laptop open, watching the live bidding unfold. The numbers climbed steadily higher as collectors vied for the rare piece, each bid pushing it further beyond his wildest expectations. When the auctioneer's hammer finally fell, the final realized price left him stunned. His modest kitchen seemed to shrink around him as he read the figure over and over. His 1995 Doubled Die Obverse Roosevelt Dime had fetched between $35,500 and $106,500, depending on grade and buyer appetite, a staggering sum for something that had once sat unnoticed in a roll of bank-issued change. Daniel leaned back in his chair, a quiet smile spreading across his face. The ordinary had once again revealed itself to be extraordinary, a reminder that even in the smallest, most overlooked corners of life, remarkable treasures still wait to be found. In 2006, the United States Mint continued its steady rhythm, producing billions of coins for circulation across the country. The Roosevelt dime still carried the same dignified portrait it had worn for 60 years, its design familiar to every pocket and purse. Modern minting techniques had improved consistency and reduced the odds of mistakes, but no system was ever truly perfect. At the Philadelphia facility, rows of presses roared endlessly, feeding planchets and stamping them at dizzying speeds. Inspectors walked the lines, checking bags and bins for flaws, but the sheer volume made it impossible to catch everything. Somewhere amid that industrial ballet, a subtle flaw emerged, barely noticeable at first but destined to make history in its quiet way. It happened during the preparation of one die set, when a misalignment during the hubbing stage left faint doubling on the die surface. It wasn't dramatic like some famous double dies of earlier decades. Instead, it was restrained, almost shy. The flaw marred only a handful of dimes before the die was replaced, a few dozen coins slipping through unchecked. To the untrained eye, they looked like any other 2006 Roosevelt dime, shiny and ordinary. But closer examination revealed something uncanny. The word Liberty and the date 2006 bore a soft but unmistakable doubling, the letters showing an odd shadowy echo, as if Roosevelt's name had been whispered twice onto the metal that no one noticed. The bags were sealed, shipped, and circulated like nothing had happened. Months passed and the flawed coins disappeared into the endless river of change, traded in grocery stores and gas stations, dropped into tip jars, or hidden in desk drawers. They lay hidden in plain sight, just waiting for the right pair of eyes to see them. Late one evening in autumn, a longtime collector named Jeremy sat alone at his dining room table, sorting through rolls of dimes under a magnifying lamp. He had spent years chasing modern errors, a patient hunter of faint anomalies most people dismissed. That night, as he worked through another box from his local bank, he stopped mid-roll, his fingers stilling on a shiny 2006 dime that didn't quite look right. The word Liberty seemed thicker somehow, uneven. He tilted the coin under the light, watching shadows deepen and fade across its surface. Then he saw it, the doubled edges of the letters glinting faintly at just the right angle. He brought it to his loupe and peered closer, holding his breath. There it was again, on the date itself, the 2 and 0 showing that same ghostly doubling. Jeremy's pulse quickened. He'd heard no mention of a double die variety from 2006. Could this really be a discovery? He checked his reference books, flipping through page after page with no result. No listing, no mention. Online forums were skeptical at first when he posted his find, but a few experts took notice. One of them encouraged him to send it in for grading. Jeremy packaged it up and mailed it to a top-tier grading service, then endured 2 agonizing weeks waiting for news. When the slab finally arrived, he tore open the box with shaking hands and read the label through the plastic. 2006 Roosevelt Dime Double Die Obverse MS64 Rare Variety. His heart leapt. He hadn't just found a nice example of a known error. He had uncovered a variety so scarce it wasn't even catalogued yet. That night he placed the slab carefully in his display case and sat back staring at it as if trying to convince himself it was real. In the months that followed, word of Jeremy's dime began to spread through the collecting community. A handful of other examples turned up in the wake of his discovery, most of them in lower grades and well-worn. His coin remained one of the sharpest known examples. Collectors began to clamor for the rare error. At first the prices were modest, but as demand grew and supply remained minuscule, values started climbing. Auction houses began featuring the 2006 double die in their modern error sections, describing its faint but distinct doubling and extreme scarcity. Jeremy watched the market with fascination as sales numbers crept upward year after year. A coin that had been plucked from an ordinary bank roll now commanded bids that dwarfed anything he could have imagined at the moment of discovery. Some collectors specialized in modern oddities, while others simply wanted to own a piece of the story. Each auction brought new surprises. When Jeremy finally decided to sell his prize specimen, it was during a high-profile error coin auction in New York. He watched the live feed from home, his heart pounding as the bidding began. The numbers rose steadily, buyers pushing one another higher and higher, their competition driving the price into astonishing territory. When the gavel finally fell, Jeremy sat in stunned silence, staring at the final figure. His humble little dime had realized between $26,500 and $85,500, depending on grade and market appetite, an extraordinary sum for a coin so easily overlooked by millions of others. Jeremy leaned back in his chair, a quiet smile spreading across his face. In a world of billions of identical dimes, his had been the one to stand out, proof that even in the smallest corners there are still stories waiting to be told and treasures waiting to be found.